welcome to Chapter 14, The Three Plans. In the movies, people who go on the top secret mission always have lots of fun gadgets and maps and ropes, and sometimes they even wear a cool hat. When you're 9 and over 3/4 through and have to go to school every day, rescue missions are a lot harder, especially when you don't know where people you want to rescue are, and you have to hide everything you're doing from the person you're going on the mission for. And even though we didn't have any gadgets or ropes or hats, and we spent every break time and lunch time and home time trying to think up new ideas that might help Ahmet find his family quickly, by Thursday morning, Tom and Josie and Michael had each come up with a plan, but I hadn't been able to even think of anything. "Don't worry," said Josie. "You can help us to see if our ones will work." I tried to smile, but it didn't make me feel any better. On the way to school, we went through all the plans. Tom went first. He said we should write to the Prime Minister to tell her to keep the gates open until Ahmet had found his family. He'd even gotten the address of the Prime Minister's house from his dad, and he'd written out the letter. This is what it looked like. "Dear Prime Minister, we heard from the people on the bus that the government were going to lock the gates so that no more refugees could come in. But our friend Ahmet is a refugee boy. You might have heard of him because he's famous for beating up Brendan the bully, and he doesn't know where his mum and dad are, and he needs to find them. Please, Prime Minister, can you help keep the gates open so that he can find them again, and so that he can be happy again? Thank you." I thought it was a good idea, and so did Josie, but Michael said it wouldn't work because the Prime Minister was in charge of the government, and probably being the one who told the security guards to lock the gates in the first place, and sent them her special keys, so we couldn't ask her for any help at all. Then Josie talked about her plan, which was called the Special Appeal. She said we should ring the newspaper and tell them all about it, because her mum and dad were always complaining about how many special appeals there were for charities in the newspaper, and once the appeal went out, Ahmet's mum and dad would see it and get in touch. Josie had written the special appeal out and made it as short as possible so that the newspapers could print it quickly. This is what it looked like. Special appeal. "Please, everyone, a boy called Ahmet who was in Nelson School ran away from Syria because of bombs and lost his mum and dad. 2. If you see a man and a woman who look like this is their son or your Ahmet's mum and dad, please ring Mrs. Khan on the telephone number of our school, which is below. We need to find Ahmet's family before the gates are locked, which is why this appeal is so special." We all liked the special idea plan. But then Tom said that even if we did put the appeal in the newspaper, it would only be sold in England, and Ahmet's mum and dad and anyone who might have seen them would never see it. He knew because when he lived in America, he only ever saw American newspapers, and that's what it must be like in other countries of the world too. Then Michael told us about his plan. We should write to the High Court, to the judge sitting in the highest chair in the land, and ask them to order all the security guards to open the gates when they see Ahmet's mum and dad, he whispered. It's called an appeal too. I've heard my mum talking about them because her law firm are always doing them for people. I'd ask her to help Ahmet, but she's always complaining about how much work she has to do, and she charges hundreds of pounds for an hour. "But we can't afford that," cried out Tom. "I know," said Michael, rolling his eyes, "which is why I'm saying we should do the appeal ourselves." "Is it an appeal like my newspaper one?" asked Josie. "Sort of, except it's for a judge. All we need to do is find out who the highest judge in the land is and write to them," replied Michael. "We could even send them your appeal," he said, giving Josie a nudge on the arm. "We only need to change it a little bit. Mum's always saying that judges have nothing better to do than read appeals all the time." We were all excited about this idea the most, and as no one could think of anything that might go wrong with it, we decided to go to the school library at home time to find out the name of the highest judge in the land. So when the last bell rang, we told Ahmet we had to get home quickly so he wouldn't follow us, and we headed straight there. Our school library isn't as big as the one Mum works in, but it has larger windows and lots more sunlight, which means you can see all the books better. Mrs. Finicky is our librarian. She always wears brightly coloured clothes and bright red lipstick, and you don't ever have to look for her because she's always standing right behind the library counter. I like Mrs. Finicky because she always gets excited whenever you ask her anything. She tells people off for not looking after their books properly, just like Mum. She has a large sign on the counter that says, "Books are like people. Look past their covers and they'll take you on a great adventure." I like it because it's fun to imagine people as books and guess what their adventures they're about to take you on. When we got to the library counter, we all looked up at Mrs. Finicky. She was wearing a sky blue top and sky blue skirt, and Mrs. Finicky smiled and looked down at us and said, "Hello, how can I help you all today?" Tom and Josie and me all looked over at Michael and we waited, so we asked, "Miss, do you know where we can find out who the highest judge in the land is? We need to find out for homework." "Really?" said Miss Finicky, frowning. We all nodded. Miss Finicky scratched her chin. "I think we'll have to look online for that," she said, as she started typing into her computer. We nodded and we waited excitedly for an answer as Miss Finicky narrowed her eyes and looked at the screen. After a few seconds, she said, "Here we go. Right. Was it the name of the Lord Chief Justice you were after, or the High Court Judge for the Family Division?" We all looked at each other and then Michael said, "Family Division, please." Mrs. Finicky wrote the name down on a piece of paper, which she gave to Michael. We looked over his shoulder and read, "H.C. Family Division, Dame Leslie Williamson." "Anything else?" said Mrs. Finicky. "Does he have her address on there, miss?" Miss Finicky frowned again. "Her address? You have to send her a letter as part of your homework?" We all nodded. "So that it gets to her by tomorrow," I added. "It's the High Court of Justice you'll be needing to write to," said Mrs. Finicky, narrowing her eyes at the computer screen as she copied it down. "But even if you post it today and it gets to her office tomorrow or on Saturday, remember that the courts are closed over the weekend, and it won't be the judge who gets your envelope. She'll have a secretary open her mail for her." She handed the slip of paper with the address to me. "Anything else?" She looked at our downcast faces. "I'm sure she'll read your letter eventually," she added gently. "It might just take a while." We left and gathered in the hallway outside. "What are we going to do now?" said Josie. Her face was all pink, which is what happens when she's really upset. "Even if we send the judge the appeal the right way, the gates will be shut before she even gets it. It's already Thursday, and after this weekend we'll only have 5 days left." We all looked at Michael, who shrugged and looked at the floor. "We've got to think of another idea." We all nodded, but I felt sick inside. I was scared that Ahmet's family wouldn't be found in time. We were all silent on the bus ride home. Everyone was thinking hard, but I could tell that none of us had come up with anything. I felt the worst, because at least everyone else had thought of something. I hadn't come up with a single plan. Now I know it was because my brain just wasn't ready to think of anything then. It wouldn't be ready until the weekend. But when it was, it came up with a plan so fantastic that nobody could say no to it. Not even a judge sitting in the highest chair of the land. Okay, bye.